The key turned in the lock with a soft metallic sigh. Leona Miles stepped into the dim hallway of Eckhart Hall, the scent of old chalk and fresh polish wrapping around her like a faded memory. 10 floors above, the University of Chicago glittered with prestige and grant-funded ambition. But down here, at 9:58 p.m., it was silent, almost sacred. She tugged her gray janitor's jacket tight across her chest, the fabric thinned from years of scrubbing stairwells and lecture floors. Her ID badge swung loosely against her collarbone, an ironic little rectangle that read Facilities Support under the name of a woman who used to place in statewide math tournaments. That was a different life. A life buried under years of second jobs, overdue notices, and the kind of grief that keeps you mopping instead of dreaming. She flicked the hallway lights on. The buzz was faint, the kind that most people forgot after a second. But Leona noticed everything. That was the problem. Her cart squeaked as she pushed it forward. She passed classroom doors etched with brass nameplates. Dr. T. Kulkarni, Applied Topology, Dr. W. Anderson, Statistics and Data Science. Behind those doors were ideas that reshaped industries. Discoveries that would win grants, maybe Nobel Prizes. And in 2 hours, she'd be mopping under their whiteboards like she had every weeknight for the past 6 years. She paused at room 314. There was a note taped to the glass. Projector malfunction. AV repair scheduled. Inside, the glow of a desk lamp cast a golden cone across a forest of empty seats. The room looked abandoned mid-thought. She pushed the door open, careful not to make a sound. The air smelled like dry erase markers and ambition. Leona moved toward the whiteboard, then stopped. There it was again. Someone had filled the board with equations, layers of them, nested variables, notations only someone fluent in non-linear optimization could follow. It wasn't undergrad work. It wasn't even standard grad work. This was a challenge. The kind of problem professors gave their top doctoral candidates just to see who would flinch first. And yet, she tilted her head. Something about the way the third line curved into the matrix shift made her squint. It was elegant, but flawed. The constraint wasn't balanced. Her pulse picked up. She looked around the room, empty, and stepped closer. The silence wrapped around her like a velvet rope. She picked up a dry erase marker from the tray, clicked the cap. She shouldn't. She was here to clean, not think. But then again, thinking used to be the only thing she was good at. Her hand moved before her doubt could catch up. One line, a correction to a coefficient. Another variable adjusted. Then she stopped, looked at it again, bit her lip, continued. She wasn't rewriting the problem, just nudging it. Respectfully, carefully, like someone tuning a piano that had been nearly perfect. Leona stepped back, read the board, top to bottom, then started from scratch beside it, her mind slipping into rhythm. Her body remembered, even if the world had long stopped asking her to prove anything. Behind her, the hallway light shifted. Footsteps. Her fingers froze. The marker fell into the tray with a clink that echoed too loud in the still room. She turned just in time to see a tall figure in a wool overcoat standing in the doorway. He didn't move, didn't speak. The lamplight caught the silver rims of his glasses. Dr. Elliot Barnes. She knew who he was. Everyone did. He'd published algorithms that got picked up by NASA, consulted for tech firms she couldn't pronounce, and delivered guest lectures that were more performance art than academia. For a second, neither of them said anything. "I'm sorry," she said, stepping away from the board, hands up like she was trespassing. "I didn't mean to touch anything. I was just What were you doing? His voice wasn't angry. It was curious. Leona opened her mouth, closed it. Her heart thumped in her throat. I used to study this stuff, she said quietly. A long time ago. I was just trying to remember if I still could. He walked forward slowly, eyes never leaving the board. He stood directly in front of her rewritten section. You changed the vector weight, he said, almost to himself. That adjustment. It's not wrong. I didn't mean to disrespect it, Leona blurted. It's just that the constraint wasn't converging the way it should, and you noticed that? She nodded, trying not to look like she was bracing for impact. He turned to her, not harsh, just focused. What's your name? Leona Miles. Are you a student? She shook her head. I used to be, before things got complicated. Barnes looked at her for a long moment, then back at the board. This problem was given to my graduate cohort last week, he said. Only 2 attempted it. Neither saw what you just saw. Leona didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. I'm not trying to cause trouble, she said quickly. Sometimes I miss thinking like that. I used to love math. It was the only thing that made me feel like I wasn't invisible. Barnes stepped back. The moment stretched. Leona felt exposed. Silly. A woman in worn sneakers and a janitor's badge pretending to belong in a room built for brilliance. Then he said, Do you work this floor every night? She nodded. Except weekends. I want you to come back tomorrow, he said. Same time. Leona blinked. Why? He studied her for a beat longer. Because people like you are the reason I still teach, he said. And I'd like to see what happens when someone gives you a real chance. Leona stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. No uniform, he added. Just bring your mind. Then he turned and walked out the door, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hallway. Leona stood in the empty room, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and hope. Behind her, the whiteboard still glowed softly in the lamplight, a trail of inked thoughts that hadn't just survived the night. They'd changed it. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The train rumbled past in the distance as Leona waited at the corner of 55th and Ellis, the wind brushing her curls across her cheeks. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. You okay? You didn't come home last night. Leona stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, I'm okay. Just something happened. I'll tell you tonight. She slipped the phone into her pocket and stared up at the stone and glass face of the University of Chicago's East entrance. Morning students were beginning to trickle in, backpacks slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, already halfway through their day before the sun fully rose. Leona watched them for a beat too long, then turned and walked home, her shift over, but her mind very much awake. Later that afternoon, Janelle stood at the stove, flipping pancakes that were probably more sugar than flour. The tiny apartment smelled like cinnamon and something a little burnt. Leona sat at the cracked formica table, hands around a chipped mug, trying to decide how much of the previous night actually happened and how much had been a dream stitched together from exhaustion and memory. So, Janelle said, without turning around, you gonna tell me why you didn't come home until almost 6 this morning? And don't say you got stuck on the blue line, because I checked the tracker. Leona hesitated. You remember Professor Barnes? Janelle turned. The one you used to call the math whisperer. Yeah. Why? I met him. Janelle blinked. Okay. Met him how? At work. Last night. I was cleaning one of the rooms, and someone left an equation on the board. I couldn't help it. I just started writing. Janelle's brow furrowed. Wait, you were doing math at 3 a.m? Leona nodded. And he saw you? Another nod. And what, he offered you a scholarship on the spot? She said with a smirk, flipping a pancake. He asked me to come back tonight. No uniform, just me. The spatula stopped midair. The sizzle of the pan seemed louder in the pause. Are you serious? Janelle turned around fully. Leona, that's huge. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe nothing. But the way he looked at what I wrote, she trailed off, heart still fluttering from the memory. It wasn't pity. It was like he saw me. Janelle crossed her arms, eyes searching her sister's face. You've been invisible for a long time. Yeah, Leona said quietly. I know. That evening, Leona stood in front of her closet, which was really just a hanging rod beside the kitchen. She pulled out a navy blouse and her only clean pair of black pants. The fabric still held the scent of the lemon cleaner from her cart. She took a long look in the mirror. Not a professor, not a student, but something else. Something in between. At 9:45 p.m. she stood again in front of Eckhart Hall. This time, no cart. No ID badge. Just a spiral notebook under one arm, and nerves in her stomach tight as piano wire. Inside, the halls were quieter than usual. She moved through them like a ghost retracing old steps. When she reached room 314, the door was open. The light was on. Barnes stood at the whiteboard, marking a fresh problem. Similar structure to the one from the night before, but with a new variable constraint. He didn't turn when she entered. You came, he said. I said I would. Most people say that. Fewer mean it. She set her notebook down on the desk nearest the board. So, what is this? A test? Barnes turned, finally facing her. A conversation, if you're willing. Leona looked at the board. That's not a casual chat. He almost smiled. True? Sit? She nodded and took a seat. Barnes walked to the side, leaned against the edge of the desk, arms crossed. I want to know how someone who didn't finish college rewrote a line that 3 of my top doctoral students couldn't solve. And don't say instinct. I wasn't going to, she said. I studied. I didn't stop just because I dropped out. Why did you drop out? Leona hesitated. My grandmother. Stage 4, colon cancer. I was 18. She raised me, and I couldn't leave her alone. So I stayed, worked, took night jobs. I thought I'd finish school later, but later got crowded out by bills. Barnes nodded slowly. What did you study? Math. Always math. You don't talk about it like most students. Most students talk about it like it's a ladder to something. I talk about it like it's the thing itself. It always made sense, even when life didn't. There was a beat of silence. Then he walked to the board again. Then solve this, he said, pointing to a constraint system he'd adjusted since she entered. If you still can. Leona stood slowly, uncapped a marker. Her hands were steadier tonight. She started working, murmuring the numbers under her breath, letting the logic guide her. Pause there, Barnes said, stepping forward. Why did you subtract here? Because the weighted cost function over that interval was skewing the result. You didn't adjust the feedback loop from the second term. He blinked. You caught that fast. You left the mistake in on purpose. His eyebrows lifted just slightly. Did I? You wanted to see if I'd trust my own brain over your credentials. A smile, this time real. "And did you?" Leona capped the marker. "I did." Barnes nodded. "Good." Then the door creaked open. A young man stepped inside, clean cut. Crisp khakis, designer sweater. He stopped when he saw Leona at the board, then looked at Barnes. "Sorry, thought this was available." "It's occupied, Connor," Barnes said without turning. Connor looked at Leona again. This time his gaze lingered longer than necessary. "Not curious, calculating. I didn't realize we were auditing janitors now," he said lightly. Leona froze. Barnes didn't. "She's here because she solved something you couldn't," he said evenly. Connor's smirk faltered. Interesting. Then he turned and left. Leona exhaled. The tension hadn't left her shoulders. "I've dealt with worse," she said, forcing a smile. "Doesn't mean you should have to." Leona sat again. Her heart was still racing, but not from fear, from exposure. She'd seen that look before. Pity wrapped in polish. "What is this really?" she asked. "Why me?" Barnes looked at her then, really looked. "Because I've spent years watching students memorize equations without ever asking why they mattered. You didn't just solve something, you saw it, and I think that deserves a chance." Leona didn't respond right away. She just looked back at the board, the same space that days ago she wasn't supposed to touch. Now, it was hers to answer. And maybe, just maybe, to change. Rain kissed the windows of Eckhart Hall in soft, rhythmic taps. The campus outside blurred under street lamps, all amber glow and wet concrete. Inside room 314, the clock ticked toward midnight. Leona leaned over the table, scanning her own notes, her fingers stained faintly with marker ink. Across from her, Dr. Barnes scribbled something in a leather-bound notebook. His glasses slid slightly down his nose as he worked, occasionally glancing up at the board, then at her. "Your vector work has a natural flow," he said without looking. "Most students overcorrect. You don't." Leona looked up. "I don't have anyone to impress. Just something to prove." That made him pause. He closed his notebook gently. "You know," he said, "the best mathematicians aren't always the ones with the cleanest resumes." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean the ones who didn't drop out of college and become janitors?" "I mean the ones who had to fight for their curiosity to survive." He said it softly, but there was weight behind it. A hint of something unspoken, a kind of familiarity. Leona looked at him closely for the first time. The way his hair was always just slightly tousled. The way his wedding ring was gone, but the tan line remained. The way he didn't just teach, he carried something too, something invisible. Before she could speak, the door creaked open. Again. Connor. This time he didn't enter. He leaned against the doorframe, his hands tucked casually in his coat pockets. "Didn't realize this room had become the new tutoring lounge," he said with a cool smirk. Barnes stood. "Do you need something, Connor?" "Just checking the schedule. Thought I had it booked tonight." "You didn't." Connor's eyes slid to Leona. "Interesting choice in protégés, Professor." "Is this part of some department diversity initiative?" Leona's body stiffened. Her hand clenched the pen before she remembered herself and set it down. Barnes didn't respond to the jab. Instead, he said, "If you have a question about course logistics, email me." Connor's smile thinned. "Sure thing." He lingered one breath longer than necessary, then walked off, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Leona exhaled, finally. Barnes looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded. "It's not new." "Just louder when it's dressed in a suit. He didn't smile, just sat back down, folded his hands. He's threatened. By me? You saw something he didn't. That's more dangerous in this building than you realize. She gave a humorless laugh. Well, I'm used to being underestimated, but I'm not used to being noticed. He tilted his head slightly. What did you expect to happen after the other night? I didn't expect anything. I thought maybe you'd ignore it. Maybe erase it and move on. I almost did. That stung more than she expected. She blinked. Then why didn't you? He looked down for a moment. When he met her gaze again, it was gentler. Because I've been in rooms where someone brilliant was overlooked because of where they came from or what they wore. I didn't stop it then. I won't repeat that mistake. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt earned, shared. Leona leaned back slightly, resting her hands on the edges of her notebook. You know, she said softly, when I was a kid, I thought if I was good enough at math, everything else in life would sort itself out. I thought numbers were fair. Numbers don't lie. They don't get jealous. They don't care where you live or what job you do. He studied her. But people do. She nodded. Yeah, people do. He tapped the table gently. Still, you're here, despite all of that. Only because you didn't throw me out. Leona, he said slowly, you're not here because of me. You're here because you never stopped learning. I'm just someone who happened to notice. The words landed somewhere deeper than she expected. She looked away, toward the rain-glazed windows, her reflection faint and ghost-like in the glass. Have you ever wanted to just walk away from all of this? She asked. Barnes leaned back, arms crossed. From academia, from everything, the expectations. The noise, the people who don't really see you but still talk like they own your story. He considered the question longer than she thought he would. Yes, he said. But the truth is, some of us don't get to walk away. Some of us owe it to someone to stay. Who do you owe it to? He hesitated. My brother. He was the brilliant one. But he never got a chance. He got caught up in the wrong path, while I got the scholarships, the mentors, the second chances. He didn't make it. Leona sat quietly, absorbing that. I think part of me teaches, he added, so that I don't waste the fact that I'm still here and he's not. She looked at him again, this time with new understanding. Something unspoken passed between them. Not pity, not sympathy. Just shared weight. Leona folded her notebook. I should go. My sister's probably waiting up. Barnes stood with her. Come back tomorrow? She smiled. I think you already know the answer. He watched her go, the door closing behind her with a soft click. Outside, Leona pulled her jacket tight and started down the stairs into the wet night. She didn't notice the way her footsteps felt lighter than they had in years. She didn't see the flicker in Barnes's eyes as she left, some spark between admiration and something else neither of them had the courage to name yet. But something had shifted, and neither of them could ignore it much longer. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The rain had stopped, but the city still held on to its damp quiet. By the time Leona reached her apartment, the hallway light outside their door flickered like it had for weeks, casting soft, uneven shadows on the cracked linoleum floor. She turned her key carefully, opened the door, and stepped into the warmth of home. Janelle was curled up on the couch with a textbook in her lap and a blanket draped over her shoulders. She looked up as Leona entered, eyes wide with concern. "It's after 1. I thought you were coming home earlier tonight." Leona dropped her bag on the chair, unwrapped her scarf and took a deep breath. "Time got away from me. I was working on something." "Something," Janelle repeated, closing her book. "Is this still about that professor? Barnes?" Leona didn't answer right away. She pulled a bottle of water from the fridge, leaned against the counter, and let the silence sit for a moment. Then, finally, "He's different." Janelle raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "He doesn't talk to me like I'm a charity case, or like I'm lucky to even be near the building. He actually listens. And tonight, we talked, not just about math. About life, regret, responsibility." Janelle blinked. "Okay, but you like him, don't you?" Leona froze. "What?" "I see the way your voice changes when you talk about him. You've never looked this lit up over anyone, not even when you got that job at the library 3 years ago." Leona looked away, heat blooming in her cheeks. "He's a professor. He's my mentor. This isn't some rom-com." Janelle smirked. "Tell that to the way you're blushing." Leona laughed, but it was short and quiet. "It's not like that. I don't even know what it is. He sees potential in me." "That's enough. That's how it starts," Janelle said, getting up and stretching. "Just don't let your heart get ahead of your future, okay? You've worked too hard to let anything cloud it." Leona nodded slowly, holding on to those words longer than she let on. Chug. The next evening, she arrived earlier than usual. Room 314 was empty when she walked in, the scent of dry erase ink still lingering in the air. She unpacked her notebook, lined up her pens, and sat down, anticipating. Barnes walked in at 10:01. He paused when he saw her already there. "You're early." "You're late." He smiled faintly. "Fair." He pulled out a folder from his satchel, dropped it on the desk. "I thought we'd try something new tonight." She looked at the folder. It was thick, heavy. "What is this?" "A composite proof. 3 layered problems designed to test deep intuition and systems thinking. It's part of the graduate entrance test for the extension program." Leona's eyes widened. "You want me to try this?" "I want to see what you do with it." She opened the folder slowly. Diagrams. Complex interdependencies. Variables nested within abstract conditions. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but anticipation. "This is real," she said. "Yes." "You think I can actually do this?" He looked at her, serious. "Leona, I think you've already done things harder than this. You just didn't have anyone watching." She stared at the pages, overwhelmed and exhilarated. Then quietly, "Thank you for trusting me." Barnes didn't respond at first. He took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly. "I'm not doing you a favor, Leona. I'm making up for something." She looked up. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Years ago, I had a student. Bright, unpolished, came from a background that didn't fit the mold. I pushed him too hard, gave him no room for error. He dropped out. I never reached out, never asked why." Leona's eyes softened. "You regret it?" "Every time I walk into this building." There was a long pause between them. The kind where something unspoken shifts. "I won't disappear," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, just as quiet. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, full of something neither of them named. Barnes cleared his throat. "So, Let's start with problem 1. They worked for hours. Ideas clashed, merged, evolved on the board. They argued over variables, debated interpretations, corrected each other with quiet intensity. Somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m., the gap between student and teacher blurred. At 2:17 a.m., Leona stepped back, reading through their work, her head light with exhaustion and pride. "That's it," she whispered. "We solved it." Barnes looked at her. "Yes, you did." Their eyes met and held. For a moment too long. Then the door opened, again. Marcus, the night guard, peeked in, holding a half-eaten granola bar. "Sorry," he said, amused. "Didn't mean to interrupt the math symphony." Leona laughed, covering her mouth. Barnes smiled, shook his head. "You're always welcome, Marcus." Marcus leaned against the doorframe. "Just wanted to let you know there's talk. Upstairs." "Some folks are asking why a janitor's been getting private chalk time." Leona's smile faded. Barnes stood a little straighter. "Let them talk." Marcus glanced between them. "They will. Just be ready for it." He gave Leona a knowing nod and disappeared back down the hall. Leona turned to Barnes. "I knew it was coming. The looks, the whispers. You can ignore whispers. You just have to stay louder." Leona nodded slowly, then looked down at the board, filled with equations she'd helped complete. "I'm not afraid of being seen anymore," she said. "I'm afraid of what happens when they finally look close enough." He stepped beside her, not touching her, but close enough to feel it. "Then give them something worth looking at." She looked at him, eyes wide, heart racing, not just from the math, but from this, whatever this was becoming. "Tomorrow," he said, stepping back, "we start prep for the real test." Leona smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. The cold settled in early that night, the kind that bit through fabric and clung to skin even under street lamps. Leona stood at the campus gate, breath visible in the air, her fingers curled tightly around a thermos of black coffee. Behind her, the city pulsed, sirens far off, a bus screeching to a stop, music playing faintly from a passing car. But ahead of her, Eckhart Hall glowed warm and still, waiting. She hadn't told Janelle she was going back tonight, not because she was hiding it, just because there was something sacred about what was happening, as if speaking it aloud too soon might ruin it. Inside, the hallways echoed her footsteps. Empty, polished floors, locked office doors. The usual quiet. Room 314 was dark when she arrived. That was unusual. She checked her phone. No text from Barnes. Leona hesitated, then pushed the door open. The light snapped on. He was already there, sitting in the back row, papers spread across a desk like a fan of open secrets. His blazer hung over the chair beside him, shirt sleeves rolled up, a little more human than usual. She froze in the doorway, startled. "You scared me." He didn't look up immediately. "Didn't mean to," he said, eyes still on the paper. "Just thinking." She stepped in, closing the door gently behind her. "About?" He finally looked up, and something in his expression, tired, thoughtful, almost distracted, made her pause. "You're early," he said. "You're usually at the board when I get here. I wanted to see what it felt like to sit on the other side for once." Leona walked down the aisle slowly, unsure where to stand. "Did it help?" He offered a faint smile. "Maybe." She took the seat beside him. The air between them felt different tonight. Not cold, but charged. "Something's bothering you," she said. He looked at her carefully, like he was weighing what to say. There's been pushback. From the department. Her heart dipped. About me? He nodded. Leona looked down, the feeling hitting hard and fast, like she'd somehow expected it and still wasn't ready. I knew this would happen, she said softly. People don't like when someone cuts the line. You didn't cut the line, Barnes said. You built your own path. But not everyone sees it that way. What are they saying? That I'm wasting my time, that this is some misguided rescue project, that you're not vetted, not academically credible. She scoffed, more hurt than angry. So a mop cancels out math now? No, he said quickly, but it scares them when someone breaks the system they control. Leona stared straight ahead. You should have let me walk out that night. I couldn't, he said, his voice quieter, and I wouldn't. She turned to him then. But this is going to cost you, isn't it? Barnes held her gaze. If I can't back someone who deserves a chance, what am I doing here? Her throat tightened. She looked down at his notes spread across the desk. Familiar symbols. Clean, precise logic. What if they're right, she whispered. What if I mess this up? What if I take the test and fail, and all they remember is that you bet on the janitor who couldn't deliver? Then they'll forget in a month, he said. But I won't, because I'll know you tried harder than anyone they ever gave a shortcut to. The room was silent. Then gently he slid a folder toward her. I got this from the admissions office. Placement exam, last year's version. Unofficial, off record, just for you to work through. Leona opened it. Her hands were shaking slightly. Equations, scenarios. The kind of mental marathon she hadn't run in years. This is the real thing, she whispered. Barnes nodded. You've got 3 weeks. I'll be here every night. But you have to want this more than you want to be safe. Leona closed the folder, holding it tight against her chest. I've never been safe, she said. I've just been quiet. Barnes didn't respond. He didn't have to. She stood and walked to the whiteboard, uncapping a marker. Start with the first one. He joined her. You lead. I'll follow. They worked until the building creaked under its own silence. Equations filled the board. Mistakes, corrections, moments of pure clarity. At one point, their hands brushed, reaching for the same marker. They froze. Neither of them moved. Then Leona stepped back, just slightly, but the moment hung in the air like breath in winter. As they packed up for the night, Barnes reached for his coat. There's something else. Leona paused. What? I submitted your name to the Extension Program Review Board. She turned slowly. You what? I didn't tell you, because I wasn't sure they'd even consider it. But your work, the way you've been solving through intuition, precision, I couldn't ignore it. Her heart pounded. You said I had 3 weeks. You still do. This just makes it official if you pass the placement, if you want it. Leona stared at him. You're putting your name on me, she said. I'm putting my faith in you, he corrected. She swallowed. The weight of those words settled deep in her chest. I'm going to need more notebooks, she said. He laughed, the sound catching her off guard. I figured. Outside, the city waited, unaware that a decision had just been made. Inside, Leona clutched the exam packet like it was the first real thing she'd held in years. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. But tonight, in the space between doubt and becoming, she chose to believe him, just enough. The floor of room 314 had become a constellation of crumpled notes, used pens, half-drunk coffee cups, and printouts highlighted until the ink bled through. Leona sat cross-legged near the board, her notebook open on her lap. The exam packet spread out in front of her like a battlefield. She had already gone through it 3 times, and it still wasn't clicking. It still wasn't. Problem 7. The nested function with a shifting boundary constraint. It wasn't just difficult. It felt deliberately twisted. And with every attempt, every wrong path, her confidence took a hit. Barnes had gone quiet an hour ago, seated behind her at one of the desks, reading through journal abstracts. He wasn't hovering, but she could feel him there. Like gravity. She scribbled out another line, then stared at it. Then pressed the pen so hard into the paper it nearly tore. Barnes looked up. "You're stuck." Leona didn't answer. He stood and walked over, careful not to step on the notes scattered like leaves. "You've been on this problem for nearly 2 hours. I know. You're chasing the answer. That's the point." "No," he said gently. "The point is to understand the structure. The answer is just the shadow." Leona closed the notebook with more force than necessary. "I get what you're saying. I do. But this isn't just theory for me. If I don't pass this exam, all of this opportunity, this room, this version of myself, it disappears." "It doesn't disappear," he said. "It evolves." "But you're not going to fail. You can't know that. I've seen your mind, Leona. I know what it can do when you're not trying to impress a test." She looked at him, eyes sharp. "And what if it's not enough?" He knelt beside her. "Then it won't be because you weren't ready. It'll be because they weren't." Her breath caught. He was close. Too close, but she didn't move. He didn't either. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, he reached for the exam packet, slid it aside, and laid a blank sheet of paper between them. "Forget the problem," he said. "Explain the concept to me." "Like you're teaching it, not solving it." Leona stared at the paper. Her mind resisted, then surrendered. She started talking, not in formulas, but in metaphors. She described the constraint as a river, the function as a bridge, the instability as erosion. Barnes nodded, occasionally asking questions, guiding her without leading. And then it happened. Mid-sentence, she stopped. Eyes wide. "Oh my God," she breathed. "That's it." "That's the variable. It's not supposed to stabilize. It's supposed to shift with the boundary." Barnes smiled. "There she is." Leona grabbed the pen and began writing again, fast, the lines pouring out with clarity she hadn't felt in hours. Within minutes, the problem was resolved. She stared at the solution like it was something sacred, then laughed. A little breathless, a little wild, Barnes watched her with something more than pride. Something warmer, softer. "Thank you," she said, not looking up. "For what?" "For not letting me spiral, for sitting with me in the quiet." "I like your quiet," he said, too quickly, then caught himself. Their eyes met. Neither of them moved. There it was again, tension, unspoken, undeniable. But this time Leona leaned into it, not physically, but emotionally. She didn't look away. "You ever think maybe we're pushing something we shouldn't be?" she asked. Barnes swallowed. "The exam?" She shook her head just once. "This." He didn't answer right away. The clock ticked behind them, relentless. "I do," he admitted finally. "But then I think about the nights you almost didn't come back, the nights you stayed even when no one asked you to. And I wonder if maybe we're not pushing. Maybe we're just finally letting something rise." Her throat tightened. "I'm scared," she said, so quietly it was barely sound. "So am I." The words hung there, tender and unresolved. Then, from the hallway, came a soft knock. Barnes stood quickly, almost startled. He opened the door halfway. Connor. He held a folder in his hand and wore an expression that teetered between smug and curious. "Sorry to drop in unannounced," Connor said, peering past Barnes into the room. His eyes landed on Leona. "Didn't realize you were still here." Leona stood slowly, brushing chalk from her jeans. Barnes kept his voice calm. "What do you need, Connor?" "I just wanted to drop off the guest list for Friday's department mixer. Thought you might want to include your new assistant." Leona's chest tightened. Barnes didn't move. "She's not my assistant." "Right," Connor said, letting the silence stretch. "Of course." He handed the folder over, then added, "Word gets around. Some folks are curious, others not so sure." Barnes didn't flinch. "Curiosity is the start of intelligence." "Let's hope they lean into it." Connor gave a half smile. "We'll see." Then he turned and left. Barnes closed the door slowly. Leona stood frozen for a moment. "They're watching." "Yes. They think this is something it's not." He looked at her carefully. "Is it?" Leona didn't answer. She couldn't, not yet. Instead, she turned back to the board. "Let's finish the rest of the packet." Barnes joined her. But this time, the space between them wasn't just academic. It was fragile and real, and full of a promise they hadn't made, but both had felt. The midday light fell through the window blinds in slanted lines, striping the room with warmth and silence. Leona sat at the dining table, surrounded by stacks of printouts, spiral notebooks, and a calculator that had seen better days. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, untouched. She didn't notice. Janelle stood in the kitchen, flipping through the mail. "You got something from the university." Leona didn't look up. "Another maintenance schedule?" "Nope." Janelle walked over, holding a plain envelope. "It's from the Department of Mathematics." "Real envelope, real seal." Leona blinked, pulled herself out of the numbers, and took the letter. Her fingers hovered over the flap for a beat too long. "You okay?" Janelle asked. "Yeah, just..." She tore the seal, unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned it. She read it again and again. "Well," Janelle pressed, "they confirmed my seat for the placement exam. Officially, I'm on the list." Janelle let out a small whoop. "That's huge." "Wait, when is it?" Leona's voice was almost a whisper. 17 days. The weight of it settled between them. Janelle stepped closer. "Leona, this is everything. You've already made it this far. You're doing it." Leona folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope. "I just have to pass. That's all." "That's not all," Janelle said. "You've already proven something they can't unsee." Leona managed a faint smile. "Let's hope it's enough." Later that evening, Leona walked into Eckhart Hall earlier than usual. She needed quiet, space to think. Room 314 was open, just barely. She nudged the door gently and slipped inside, but the lights were already on. At the front of the room, Connor stood with his arms crossed, staring at the whiteboard filled with her recent notes. He turned when he heard the door. "Oh," he said, smirking. "Didn't realize this was reserved for after-hours scholars." Leona stayed near the door. "Looking for something?" "Perspective," he said. "But all I'm seeing are half-baked derivatives and poor boundary mapping." Her pulse ticked upward. "That's not your call, isn't it?" he replied. "This department has standards, and I know you're Barnes's little project now, but let's not pretend the rest of us aren't watching." She swallowed hard. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," he said, stepping closer. "I know you didn't go through the admissions process. I know Barnes is bending rules for you, and I know people are starting to ask questions." Leona held her ground. "Maybe they should be asking why it took a janitor to notice the error in your linear cascade model." Connor's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch. The door opened behind her. Barnes. His expression was unreadable as he looked between them. "Am I interrupting?" he asked calmly. Connor straightened. "Just leaving." Barnes stepped aside to let him pass. As he exited, Connor added, "Good luck with your experiment." The door closed, and the room exhaled. Barnes looked at Leona. "You okay?" She nodded, but her eyes were glassy. "They think I don't belong here. They're wrong. They're loud. They don't know what you've survived. Leona turned to the board, her voice low. They think you're risking your career on a long shot. I'm not. She turned to him. Then what am I? Barnes stepped closer, slowly. You're the reason I still believe this place can mean something. Her breath caught. For a second they stood in it, in the truth of it, in everything that hadn't been said. Then Leona looked away. I can't be the reason you remember who you are. He hesitated. I know. I need to earn this on my own. I want that for you. She nodded slowly, turned back to the board, and erased everything in one clean sweep. What are you doing? He asked, starting fresh, no half-baked derivatives. No fear of being seen, just math, just me. Barnes watched her, pride flickering beneath the exhaustion in his eyes. And something else, something he wasn't allowed to say, not yet. Chapter 3 hours later, Leona stepped out into the cold, her coat unbuttoned, her face flushed from chalk dust and adrenaline. The night air hit her like a wave. A familiar voice called from the corner. Hey, genius. Leona turned. Tina Alvarez, the other night janitor, leaned against the lamppost, holding a bag of chips and wearing a grin. I heard from Marcus you're not cleaning anymore. That true? Leona smiled. Still on the payroll, just scrubbing equations now. Tina chuckled. I always knew you were hiding something. You had that, don't talk to me, I'm thinking about another universe look. Leona laughed, genuinely. Tina stepped forward, serious now. Don't let them drag you down. These halls, this place, it's built to intimidate. Just remember, you were here before they noticed. That means something. Leona's throat tightened. Thanks. Tina gave her a quick nod. You ever get tired of numbers? I got a mop with your name on it. Noted. They parted ways with a smile. But as Leona walked home, her steps slowed. A thought kept echoing. What if she really couldn't outrun the whispers? What if Connor was right? What if Barnes wasn't just helping her, but protecting himself from something he didn't want to admit? She stopped on the sidewalk, looked up at the building that had become both sanctuary and battlefield. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket and opened her notes app. She wrote one line. Let the math speak louder than the room, and she kept walking. The smell of whiteboard cleaner lingered in the air as Leona stepped into room 314, balancing a stack of printouts, 2 worn textbooks, and a single mechanical pencil that had become her lucky charm. The night outside pressed against the windows like a presence, thick, heavy, and humming with winter's warning. Barnes was already there, sitting at the edge of the desk, waiting. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. A yellow legal pad sat in front of him, half filled with scribbled diagrams and half doodles that hinted at a distracted mind. When he looked up, there was something unfamiliar in his expression, not stress, not the usual exhaustion. Hesitation. Leona slowed. You're early. I wanted to talk before we got into the weeds. She raised an eyebrow, cautiously setting her materials down. About the test? He shook his head. About us. A long pause hung in the air like a held breath. She didn't sit. Okay. He stood, walked to the window, rested a hand against the glass like he needed something solid to steady the words. I've spent most of my life here, in this building, this campus. The faculty meetings, the conferences, the lectures that echo in half-empty halls. He turned slightly toward her. It's easy to forget what passion looks like when you've replaced it with routine. Leona stayed still, eyes fixed on him. And then you came in, he said softly. At 3 a.m, carrying equations like secrets you weren't sure you were allowed to share, and suddenly the routine cracked open. Her voice was careful. Barnes, I'm not saying this to complicate things, he said quickly. I need you to know that this matters, not just what you're doing. Not just what you're becoming. You matter. Leona's pulse raced. And what happens if I fail? If I take this test and I don't pass, do I still matter then? He turned to face her fully now. You were never a result to me, Leona. Her throat tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. She took a step forward, not even realizing she had. You think I don't feel this too? Her voice cracked slightly. Every time I walk in here and you're already waiting, every time you say something encouraging and I pretend it's only professional. His eyes searched hers. I feel it, she said. But I don't know where to put it. Barnes stepped forward slowly. Then let's not name it. Not yet. Let's just protect it until it's time. A long beat passed. Leona nodded, barely. Okay. Silence settled again, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed, lived. She finally exhaled, then pulled out the exam packet. Problem 10's been haunting me. Want to haunt it back with me? He smiled. Absolutely. They returned to the chalkboard like dancers falling into a familiar rhythm, back and forth, step and counterstep. Chalk dust flew in little clouds as Leona argued one derivative path, and Barnes countered with another, but the problem wouldn't budge. After an hour, Leona stepped back, frustrated. It's like it's tricking us. It's meant to, Barnes said. They layer traps into the design to mimic real-world scenarios. It's more psychology than math. She frowned. So, it's about mindset? In part. It's about resilience. It's about knowing when to stop forcing and start listening. Leona turned to the board again, eyes scanning the tangled logic. Slowly, she erased 3 lines and rewrote the core assumption. The room was quiet, except for the squeak of chalk. When she stepped back again, the answer unfolded. Like a door she hadn't seen before finally opened. Barnes stared at it, nodded once. That's it. Leona didn't cheer, didn't grin. She just breathed. And let her shoulders drop. I'm tired, she admitted. He looked at her. You don't have to finish everything tonight. No, but I want to know I'm ready. Barnes walked over, placed a hand gently on the top of her notebook. You're more ready than anyone I've ever taught. She looked up at him. And you've taught a lot. None like you. They stood in it again, that electric, fragile quiet. Then the door creaked open. Janelle. She froze when she saw them, close, too close, eyes locked. Leona stepped back instinctively. Hey. What are you doing here? Your phone's been off. I got worried. Leona looked at her screen. Dead battery. Janelle stepped in, closing the door behind her. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had to see you. Barnes gave a polite nod. You're not interrupting. But Janelle's eyes didn't leave Leona's. You okay? She asked. Leona nodded. Yeah, I'm just pushing hard. Janelle softened. I brought you something. She pulled out a Tupperware container from her bag. Your favorite, rice and honey-roasted carrots. Thought you could use something that wasn't vending machine coffee. Leona took it, emotion prickling at the edges of her exhaustion. Thank you. Barnes stepped back toward his desk. I'll give you 2 a minute. As he walked away, Janelle leaned in. Leona, is something going on between you two? Leona didn't answer. Just stared at the board. Janelle placed a hand on her arm. Just don't lose yourself. Not for anyone, even someone who believes in you. Leona met her gaze. I think I'm finally finding myself. That's what scares me. Janelle gave a small, sad smile. That's how you know it's real. Behind them, Barnes cleared his throat softly. I'll be in my office if you want to go over anything else before the weekend. Leona nodded. Thank you. As he left, the door clicked shut, and Leona stood there, food in hand, equations behind her, and 2 truths pulling at her in opposite directions. She wasn't just solving problems anymore. She was becoming someone entirely new, and not everyone would understand who that was. The wind that swept through the University of Chicago that morning felt sharper, more decisive. It rattled the windows of Eckhart Hall and scattered brittle leaves across the stone steps like hurried whispers. Leona stood outside the front doors, watching students rush past her with earbuds, coffee cups, and unbothered faces. They belonged here. She still wasn't sure if she did. Inside, the building felt colder than usual. Maybe it was just her. The anxiety had a temperature all its own. Barnes wasn't in room 314 when she arrived. For once, she beat him there. She unpacked slowly, laid out her materials with more care than usual, trying to still her hands. She wasn't sure why she felt nervous tonight. Maybe because everything was beginning to feel real. Close. She reached for the test packet, now worn and curled at the edges, and stared at problem 13, a logic lattice disguised as a simple number pattern. It looked innocent. It wasn't. The door opened quietly behind her. Barnes stepped in, carrying 2 lattes and a folder tucked under his arm. "You're early," he said, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Leona gave a faint smirk. "I wanted to get a head start on this one. It's mocking me." He handed her the drink. "Vanilla, no sugar." "Right?" She accepted it. "Right. And you remembered." He shrugged, then pulled out his notes. "Of course I did." They settled into the usual rhythm. Notes, chalk, debates that turned into discoveries. But tonight, Leona was more focused, more clipped. Her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Not because of the math, but because of him. Every look, every unspoken pause lately had been charged. Undefined, protected by the pretense of professional collaboration, but the walls between them were thinning. And she felt it. He moved closer to point out an error in her equation. She could feel his breath, just briefly, and her mind clouded with something that had nothing to do with numbers. She stepped back. "I need a break," she said suddenly. Barnes blinked. "Of course." She walked over to the window, stared out at the lamplit campus. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, shoulders tense, eyes wide. He stayed quiet behind her. "I don't know what we're doing," she said without turning, "and I don't mean the math." He didn't answer right away. Then, "Neither do I." She turned to him. "We're crossing lines. I know. And I can't afford for this to be a distraction." He stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough to matter. "Do you think that's what this is? A distraction?" She didn't speak. He continued softer. "Because every night I walk into this room and see you here, I don't feel distracted. I feel like I've finally started paying attention." Her heart caught. "But what happens after the test? After I pass or fail or disappear back into wherever people like me are supposed to go?" "You don't disappear." "How do you know?" He hesitated. "Because I won't let you." The room fell quiet again. "I need to be seen for what I do," she whispered. "Not for how I make someone feel." He nodded slowly. "Then let's stay here." "Right here. Just this." "Just this," she repeated. But the words didn't settle. They floated, hung, the door opened. Again, this time it was Marcus. He carried a manila envelope and an awkward expression. "Sorry to barge in. You got mail, Professor. The department put it in the wrong box." Barnes accepted the envelope, brows furrowing. "Thanks, Marcus." The door clicked shut. Leona leaned against the table, arms folded. "What is it?" Barnes opened it slowly. Pulled out a single sheet. His face changed, subtly, but she saw it. "What?" she asked. He didn't answer, just handed it to her. It was a memo. From the Dean's Office. Subject: Inquiry into Ethics of Private Mentorship Engagement. Request: Professor Henry Barnes to meet with Review Board for internal evaluation. Leona read it twice, then looked up, stunned. "They're investigating you?" He nodded. "Apparently, Connor's been talking." Her chest tightened. "Because of me?" "They're saying it's about boundaries, conflicts of interest." "Nothing official yet, but it's enough to raise flags." She stepped forward. "You said this wouldn't affect you." "I didn't say that. I said it was worth it." She shook her head. "No, you worked your entire life for this. Your name, your reputation. None of that matters if I stop standing for the people who deserve to be here." She met his eyes. You're risking everything. He held her gaze. So are you. The clock ticked in the silence that followed. Finally, she whispered, "This isn't fair." "No, it's not. And I hate that I'm the reason you're in their crosshairs." "You're not." "Their fear is." Leona looked down at the paper again. Her hands trembled slightly. "What do we do?" she asked. "We keep going," he said. "We solve the next problem. Even if they're waiting to bury us in the process. Especially then." She sat down, opened her notebook again. Barnes joined her. The memo sat untouched between them, and while the rest of the building slept, they returned to the work like warriors preparing for a war that had already begun. Because now, more than ever, every equation had become a form of defiance, and every answer a way to say, "I deserve to be here." Leona stared at the equations scrawled across the whiteboard, but for once her mind couldn't hold the math. The numbers blurred, the variables didn't cooperate, she hadn't slept. Every moment since Barnes handed her that memo played in her head like a looping reel. The paper, the sharp look in his eyes, the words "review board," and the chill that settled in her chest the second she realized this wasn't about her failing anymore. This was about him falling with her. The clock above the door read 9:17 p.m. The test was 5 days away. And she hadn't gotten a single problem right in over an hour. The door creaked open behind her. Barnes stepped in, looking older than he had 2 nights ago. He carried a thermos and a worn manila folder, his shoulders more rigid than usual. "You didn't answer my message," he said. "I didn't know what to say." He nodded, set the thermos on the desk, and opened the folder. "I pulled last year's oral defense questions. They might not give you those, but they're similar. We should practice." Leona didn't move. "They're going to put you on leave, aren't they?" He paused. "It's possible. And if they do, I'll lose the only person who believed in me." "You won't lose me." She turned to face him, eyes blazing. "Don't say that like it's simple." "If you're not here, if they shut you out, what am I supposed to do? Walk into that testing room alone, knowing I'm the reason you're under fire?" Barnes stepped forward. "You're not the reason." She held up the memo. "This paper disagrees. They were looking for a reason long before you walked into that room with a mop and a mind full of unsolved equations." Her hands dropped to her sides. "You keep saying it's worth it. But is it really? Worth your reputation? Your career?" "Yes." The word hit her like a jolt. He didn't look away. "Because for the first time in years, I'm doing something that matters, not publishing, not lecturing. Witnessing. I'm witnessing what it looks like when someone who should have been here all along finally gets their shot." Leona swallowed hard. "I believe in you, Leona." "That's not romantic, it's not hopeful, it's factual." "Like math. Undeniable." She blinked fast. "Why does that make it harder to breathe?" He stepped even closer. "Because we both know what's coming, and neither of us can stop it." She looked down. "I keep thinking about the test. And all I hear is their voices, Connor's, the committees, everyone who thinks I don't belong. Then listen to mine instead." Silence. Barnes reached into his folder again, pulled out a printed sheet, and handed it to her. "What is this?" "Your application to the extension program. It's been reviewed. Tentatively approved pending exam scores, but it's real now. Your name's in the system. You're on the roster." Her fingers traced over the header, her name centered at the top. For a moment, the world dropped away. "I haven't passed yet," she whispered. "But you've arrived." She clutched the page like it was more than paper, like it was proof she existed in their world now. He stepped back, softer. "Take a night off." "I can't." "You should." "I'll fall behind." "You won't." She looked up. "I don't know who I am without the fight." He gave a sad smile. "Then maybe the test isn't what you need to pass. Maybe it's believing you're more than the struggle that got you here." She didn't answer. Her throat was too tight. The door opened again, unexpected this time. Janelle walked in, breathless. Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. Barnes waved her in. We were just finishing, but Janelle didn't move. Her eyes were on Leona. I talked to Tina, she said. She told me what Connor's been saying. It's ugly, but it's not the truth. Leona's voice was thin. The truth doesn't always win. Then we make it louder, Janelle said. She pulled something from her bag, a small, folded note. This came in the mail, from Mom's storage unit. I forgot I even requested it. She handed it to Leona. Leona unfolded the yellowed paper slowly. It was a letter. From her grandmother, dated 34 years ago. She read the first lines aloud, voice cracking. If you find this one day, it means I didn't make it far enough to tell you myself. But know this, your mind is a gift, even when the world doesn't see it. Especially then. Leona's hand trembled. She read more, quietly. Janelle waited, still. Barnes watched with something reverent in his silence. Then she folded it carefully. I can't quit now, she said. Not with her watching, not with everything we didn't finish. Barnes smiled. Then let's get back to it. They turned to the whiteboard again. But this time Leona stood taller. The fear didn't vanish, but it shifted. It became fuel. Because the test was coming, and so was the world that would have to reckon with everything she was, everything she had always been. Even if it hadn't fit in their box, especially because it didn't. Snow had started to fall. Soft, relentless, the kind that blanketed everything, like the world was trying to hush itself. Leona stood outside Eckhart Hall, watching flakes cling to the iron gate, her breath rising in clouds. Tonight, the building felt different, not just because the placement exam was in less than 48 hours. Not just because she'd barely eaten or slept. It felt like something was closing in. She pulled her scarf tighter and stepped inside. The hallway lights flickered softly overhead. The familiar hum of the old radiator echoed down the corridor like a heartbeat. She passed the faculty offices on her way to room 314, her footsteps muffled by layers of nerves and snow-wet boots. Barnes wasn't there. Odd. He was always early. She sat at the edge of the desk, opening her notebook to review the integration problems she'd flagged the night before. 5 minutes past 10. Still no Barnes. She pulled out her phone and texted him. Everything okay? No response. Her heart ticked faster. She was about to call when the door opened. Not him, but Connor. He stepped in like he owned the air. In his hand was a folder. His eyes scanned the room like it offended him. What do you want? Leona asked, not moving. He smiled, but it was a tight, performative thing. I thought you'd want to know. The review board met today. Her chest tightened. And? She asked, keeping her tone flat. They're putting Barnes on temporary leave. Effective immediately. The words landed like cold metal in her stomach. You're lying. I wish I were. He stepped forward. He's been barred from campus until the investigation's complete. You'll have a different proctor for your exam. Leona stood slowly, her fists clenched at her sides. You did this. He tilted his head. I followed policy. You blurred lines. No, you drew them. Her voice cracked. And you made sure I stayed on the wrong side. He opened the folder and held it out. Copy of the formal notice. I figured you'd want to see how fast admiration turns into liability when it's not convenient anymore. She didn't take it. He set it on the desk, then turned toward the board. Her work from last night still filled it, dense with variables and tangled logic loops. You're talented, he said almost casually, but talent doesn't rewrite protocol. And it sure doesn't rewrite perception, no matter how hard he tried. She didn't answer. He moved toward the door, then paused. Good luck, Leona. You're going to need it. When he was gone, the silence was unbearable. She stared at the board but couldn't see the math anymore. Just white space, just absence. Her phone buzzed. Barnes, I'm so sorry. They blindsided me. I fought it. I'll still be here. Just not there. You've got this. She wanted to scream. Instead, she sank into the chair, the message still glowing in her hand. She thought she'd prepared for this. She hadn't. A quiet knock came at the door. This time it was Janelle. Leona didn't look up. "They told you," Janelle said gently, stepping inside. Leona nodded. Janelle sat beside her. "He called me, asked me to make sure you ate something, said you'd forget." "That you always do when you're scared." Leona wiped a tear from her cheek with the sleeve of her sweater. "I don't know how to do this without him." "Yes, you do." Janelle set down a brown paper bag. "You've been doing it. You were solving equations in the dark long before he showed up." Leona looked at her. "But he saw me." "I saw you too," Janelle whispered. "So did Tina." "So did Marcus. You weren't invisible, Leona. You were just hiding." That hit harder than she expected. Janelle opened the bag. Inside, half a sandwich, an orange, and a chocolate bar. Leona smiled faintly. "You pack lunch like Grandma used to." "She taught me well." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Leona stood, walked to the board, and picked up the chalk. She stared at problem 12, the one she'd been avoiding. The one Barnes had promised to walk through with her tonight. She drew a deep breath, then rewrote the first line. Slowly, deliberately, like reclaiming something. "Walk me through it," Janelle said from behind her. Leona turned slightly. "You want to learn integrals now?" "I want to hear your voice explain something complicated." Leona blinked hard, then nodded. She began, and as she spoke, the panic didn't leave, but it softened. Because the fear had never been about the test. It had been about losing the one person who anchored her belief. But now, maybe that anchor was already inside her. And maybe, just maybe, she was enough, even alone. The morning of the exam arrived with a silence so still, it felt like the whole city had paused to see what Leona would do. The sky outside her apartment window was a muted gray, the kind that promised snow again but hadn't yet decided when. Leona sat on the edge of her bed, the folded letter from her grandmother clutched in one hand, her student ID badge, temporary, printed on thin plastic, in the other. Her name was printed in all caps. Leona Miles. She whispered it aloud, like it belonged to her now. In the kitchen, Janelle poured coffee into a to-go cup and set it by the door next to Leona's gloves. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Her presence was grounding. Leona finally stood, slipped on her coat, and tucked the letter into her bag. Janelle handed her the cup. "Don't let them make you shrink." "I won't," Leona said. "But it's hard not to want to disappear." Janelle nodded. "Just remember, your answers don't lie." Leona paused at the door. "Do you think he'll be there?" "He can't. You know that." "I mean after. Do you think he'll still see me the same?" "I think he'll see you clearer." Leona smiled faintly, then stepped outside. The campus was already humming with the usual morning rush. Students in heavy coats, staff unlocking side entrances, wind shoving stray leaves across sidewalks. But it all sounded far away, like she was walking through it in slow motion. Eckhart Hall loomed ahead. Inside, she was greeted at a temporary check-in desk, where a polite, middle-aged woman handed her a clipboard. "Please confirm your information and take a seat. The exam begins at 8 sharp." Leona signed without hesitation. A group of other examinees sat scattered in the waiting area, some reviewing notes, some staring blankly ahead, others fidgeting in the quiet panic of too much pressure and not enough certainty. She took a seat in the far corner, away from the others, and pulled out a small notepad. No formulas. No practice problems. Just one line, written the night before. Let the math speak louder than the room. She was still staring at it when someone cleared their throat nearby. Connor. He stood with his arms crossed, a clipboard in hand, eyes neutral but unreadable. "You'll be in room C211, he said. "That's the overflow room." Smaller, quieter. "Because I'm not a real student?" she asked. He blinked. "Because you're not enrolled in the full program yet." She looked him in the eye. "You think I'll fail?" "I think it'll be harder than you expect." Leona stood. "It already has been." She walked past him, not waiting for a reply. Room C211 was at the end of a long hallway, its door propped open with a stack of textbooks. Inside, 2 other students were already seated. An older woman with silver hair tied in a bun and a younger man who looked barely 20. Leona chose the seat at the front. A proctor entered, collected cell phones, and handed out sealed envelopes. "Do not open until instructed," she said. Leona placed the envelope in front of her. Her palms were damp. The proctor watched the clock. Exactly 8 a.m. she gave the signal. "Begin." Leona tore the seal. The first page hit hard. A deceptively simple algebraic identity. She worked quickly, hands steady. The second question was trickier. Applied calculus hidden beneath conversational wording. By question 4, she hit a wall. The diagram was complex and the wording vague. She reread it. Again and again. A bead of sweat rolled down her back. Her pencil hovered, unmoving. She heard Barnes's voice in her head. "When the problem overwhelms you, zoom out. Find the pattern that keeps repeating." She did. The sequence wasn't linear, it was recursive. She rewrote the approach. And the answer appeared. By question 10, her hand ached, but her eyes were clear. It was like dancing through code, every rhythm built on the one before. She didn't finish early. She finished exactly on time. As she handed in her packet, the proctor gave her a small smile. "Good work." Leona didn't reply. She wasn't sure if it was good work. She wouldn't know for days. But she'd done it. She stepped outside into the cold, chest rising and falling in deep waves. At the edge of the quad, a figure stood under the skeletal branches of a maple tree. Barnes. His coat was dusted with snow. He didn't wave. He just waited. Leona walked toward him, slower with each step. "I thought they barred you," she said. "They barred me from campus buildings," he said softly. "But this is public ground." She didn't smile. Not yet. She wasn't ready. "I did it," she said. "I know." She looked up at him. "I'm scared I didn't pass." "Then you're human." "I don't want to be a symbol," she whispered. "I just want to belong." He reached into his coat and handed her something. A folded sheet of paper. Her test application confirmation. Signed. Stamped. Her name listed beside a number. "You're already part of it," he said. "They just haven't caught up yet." She stared at it. Then she folded it, held it tight to her chest, and nodded. This wasn't the end. This was the moment before. And it finally felt like hers. The halls felt different when she walked them the next week. Not louder, not quieter, just changed. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was the weight she'd shed after the exam, or the new kind of tension that settled in its place. The waiting. Leona moved through the math wing like someone both seen and unseen. People nodded now, not with warmth, not with certainty, but recognition. And that was something. The results weren't posted yet. The department said 3 to 5 business days, but it had been 6. Every time her phone buzzed, her stomach tightened. She pushed through the double doors of the library, her usual seat by the corner window already taken. She chose another, tucked in a shadowed alcove, surrounded by books on topology and probability, and opened the notebook she now carried everywhere. Even if she didn't write, it felt like armor. A voice cleared gently nearby. Leona glanced up. Marcus stood awkwardly, holding a thermos and a crooked smile. "Thought you might want this," he said, offering it. "You never touch the coffee in the lounge." "You have standards." She smiled softly, accepting it. "Thanks." He didn't leave. "I saw Barnes last night," he added, pulling out the chair across from her. Leona's chest tightened. "Where?" "Jazz club off 53rd. He looked different. Calmer, like he was letting the world move without trying to chase it. She lowered her eyes. "He's not on campus anymore." "I know." Marcus hesitated. "But he's still in it. Still watching." "He told you that?" "He didn't have to." She looked up again, eyes searching his. "Is this your way of saying he misses it? Or me?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe both." Silence stretched between them, full of questions neither could name. He finally stood. "They're posting results by end of day." "Check your email." Her heart stuttered. "You sure?" "I saw the admin load the files." And then he was gone. Leona didn't check her phone immediately. She didn't run to a computer or hover near the department's office like others might have. Instead, she sat there for a while, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching snow start to fall again outside the tall windows. When she finally opened her inbox, her hands shook. One unread message. Subject: Math Placement Results. Extension Program. She clicked, scrolled. There it was. Candidate: Leona Miles. Exam. Result: Qualified with distinction. Placement level: Advanced entry. Welcome to the University of Chicago. Extension: Mathematics track. The room faded. She read it again. Then again. She didn't cry. Not right away. That would come later, when the adrenaline crashed. But her lips parted in a whisper. "I did it." And somewhere deep inside, something that had lived in shadows, doubt, fear, grief, took a final breath and let go. Her phone buzzed. "Barnes. Saw the list. You earned every letter." "Meet me at Harper Garden at 5. She typed. "Be there." Harper Garden was mostly deserted that time of year. The benches were icy. The bare branches above creaked in the wind. But the space had always been a quiet corner of the university, a place to think, to breathe. He was already there when she arrived. No coat this time, just a navy sweater, hands buried in his pockets. She walked up slowly. "You saw?" she asked. He smiled. "Qualified with distinction." "That's more than just passing. I wasn't sure I could breathe until I read it." He looked at her, really looked. "And now?" "I'm breathing." He stepped closer. Not too close. "Just enough." "I know I'm not supposed to be here," he said, voice low. "You're not on campus." Still. She studied him for a moment. "Are you okay?" "I am now." There was so much between them that hadn't been spoken, that had been buried under exams and policy and unspoken longing. And now, there was space. "What happens now?" she asked. Barnes tilted his head. "You choose." I don't want to be a symbol, she said. You don't have to be. I want to build something. Teach. Learn. Make space for girls who look like me. His smile deepened. Then do it. You really think they'll let me? They won't have a choice. They stood in the silence that followed, soft and electric. Finally, Leona took a step closer. Close enough this time. I need to know this won't be taken from me, she whispered. That we, whatever this is, won't unravel the life I'm finally building. I won't be the reason you lose anything, he said. But I don't want to lose you either. He reached out slowly, cautiously, and took her hand. You won't. She let herself feel it, just for a moment. The gravity of it. The rightness, the warmth. Then she pulled back, not with fear, but with purpose. I have orientation in 2 weeks. I'll be there. You're still under review, he smiled. Then I'll stand across the street. She laughed, real, full, unguarded. And in that cold garden with snow falling around them and futures unwritten stretching wide ahead, Leona finally believed what she'd been too afraid to say aloud. She belonged, and she wasn't done yet. The lecture hall buzzed with new energy, papers shuffling, voices blending, the occasional squeak of chair legs on tile. Leona stood at the edge of it all, her ID badge clipped to the front of her sweater, her notebook hugged to her chest like armor. The same hall she once cleaned at night now carried her name in the university's database, her picture in the system, her presence as part of something official. She had walked into this building countless times, always in the shadows. But this was the first time she entered through the front entrance as a student, not invisible, not tolerated. Chosen. Janelle walked beside her, eyes wide, scanning everything. It's different in daylight, she whispered, nudging Leona's arm. You know, without the mop. Leona smirked. Still smells like floor wax. They reached the registration table where an overworked graduate assistant was handing out orientation folders. She barely glanced up. Last name? Miles. The girl scanned the sheet. Leona Miles. Leona braced. But instead of doubt or surprise, the girl simply handed over a folder with a polite smile. Room B402. You're with Dr. Vasquez for placement advising. Janelle grabbed her hand once they stepped away. Did you see that? Leona blinked. See what? She knew who you were, and she didn't flinch. Leona exhaled. That kind of normalcy felt revolutionary. Room B402 was bright and filled with soft morning light. A round table sat in the middle, ringed with chairs. A woman with short, salt and pepper hair sat at the head, glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up as Leona entered. Ms. Miles, she said, standing. Welcome. I'm Dr. Vasquez. Leona extended her hand. Nice to meet you. Vasquez gestured to a seat. I've reviewed your placement file. Your exam performance was exceptional. Some of your work, it reminded me of a grad thesis I reviewed last year. Same intuition, different polish. Leona smiled, unsure if it was pride or disbelief warming her chest. Thank you. I had good guidance. Vasquez tilted her head slightly. Yes. Dr. Barnes. We've never worked directly, but his name carries weight. He believed in me before I had any of this. Leona held up the folder. Before I even believed in myself. There was a pause. Vasquez leaned in. I heard about the investigation. Faculty grapevine travels faster than logic proofs. Leona stiffened slightly. I'm not here to pry, Vasquez continued. But I want to be clear. Your work speaks for itself. You're here because of your mind, not because someone pulled strings. We don't do that here. Leona met her gaze. I wouldn't want it any other way. Good, Vasquez said, her expression softening. Then let's build you a path that makes this program feel like it was always waiting for you. Later that day, Leona walked the quad alone. Her class schedule was set. Her email address was live. Her campus account had login credentials. But it wasn't the paperwork that overwhelmed her. It was the belonging. She passed Eckhart Hall, slowed, then turned and walked around the side to the alley where it had all started. The service entrance. The steel door she used to slip through at midnight. It was locked now. Keypad access only. She reached out, rested her palm on the cold metal. So much had changed. And yet, this door would always be the start. A quiet voice startled her. You found your way back? She turned. Barnes stood behind her, scarf looped loosely around his neck, a paper cup of tea in his hand. You're not supposed to be on campus, she said, eyes narrowing. He grinned. You say that every time. She stepped toward him. It's orientation week. Someone will see you. I'm a guest today. Watching. From the edges. She laughed, just a little. You're bad at staying on the edges. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she said softly, They put me in the advanced track. I know, he said. Vasquez told me. Leona blinked. She talked to you? She wanted to know who you were beyond the numbers. His voice grew quieter. I told her the truth. That you don't need anyone to defend your place here. But I'd do it again every time if I had to. She stepped closer, heart thudding. You don't have to. His eyes met hers. But I want to. A beat passed. Then she whispered, I was scared this would disappear the second I reached for it. And? I'm still holding it. Good, he said. Because I think you're just getting started. She smiled. But before either of them could say more, her phone buzzed. A message from Janelle. Come to room 112. Now. Bring Barnes. You're gonna want to see this. Leona frowned. She says we have to see something. He chuckled. That's never ominous. They walked together across the courtyard, not hiding, not afraid. And for the first time, Leona realized the story wasn't ending. It was unfolding. And this chapter? It was hers. Room 112 wasn't on the map. It was tucked between the physics labs and a shuttered wing of old classrooms, half forgotten and quiet. The door creaked when Leona pushed it open. Inside, it looked nothing like what she expected. Chalkboards lined the walls, nearly every inch of them filled with messy equations, swirling notations, underlined variables, hastily drawn graphs. But that wasn't what made her stop in the doorway. It was the people. 6 students, some older, some barely out of high school, sat at the long tables, all staring up at a young woman, scribbling on the board. Janelle. She wore her faded janitorial hoodie, sleeves rolled high, chalk dust on her palms, her hair pulled back in a rushed knot. She turned just as Leona and Barnes stepped inside. There she is, Janelle beamed. The one who started this. Leona blinked. What is this? It's your shadow, Janelle said. Barnes stepped forward, eyes scanning the boards. These are advanced problems. Janelle grinned. Turns out I wasn't the only night shift worker doing calculus in her head while mopping floors. Leona's breath caught. These are students? She asked. Workers. Custodial, food service, security. A couple community members, too. We started with just 3 people last week. I posted a flyer in the staff lounge. Midnight math club. Thought it'd be a joke. She shrugged. It wasn't. One of the students stood, a middle-aged man with wire glasses and gentle eyes. "Ms. Miles," he said quietly, "your story made it safe for us to try." Leona looked at Barnes, stunned. "I didn't know," he smiled. "You weren't supposed to." "You were busy becoming the proof." A wave of emotion pressed into her chest. "This wasn't the plan." "Plans are small," Barnes said softly. "This is impact." Janelle wiped her hands on her jeans. "They're asking for more sessions, real ones, with structure. I don't know enough to teach everything, but I can hold the space." Leona stepped forward, touched the corner of the chalkboard. She read the equation on the board. It was hers. One she'd solved weeks ago, but someone had altered the variables, added a note in the margin. Alternate path through unknown. Her eyes welled. "Keep the space," she whispered. "I'll help build the rest." Barnes laid a hand on her shoulder. "You're not just passing the torch, you're lighting dozens." Later that night, she sat alone in the faculty lounge. Empty now, the vending machine humming softly, snow pressing against the window panes. She pulled out her grandmother's letter, unfolded it slowly. There was a line she hadn't paid attention to before. "If you get there, where I never did, don't forget to leave the door open." Leona touched the words, tears running hot down her cheeks. She had been chasing a place, a position, proof. But somewhere along the way, it had become something else. It had become a bridge. The next morning, she stood in front of a small class, not part of the formal university curriculum, yet a trial program, community math, open to staff and neighbors. Endorsed unofficially, quietly, by a few brave faculty. Her name was on the board. Instructor, Leona Miles. She turned to the 10 students seated in front of her. Some young, some old, some with nervous eyes, clutching worn notebooks like they held a secret. "I'm not here to tell you what you're not," she began. "You've heard enough of that already." She took a breath. "I'm here to remind you what you are. Capable, worthy, ready, even if it's been a while since anyone said that out loud." She paused. "Let that settle. The only thing you need to belong in a room like this is curiosity and a pencil. I'll provide the rest." A small smile broke across her face. "Let's begin." And as she turned back to the board, Barnes watched through the glass from the hallway. He didn't wave. Didn't need to. She had arrived. Fully. And the lesson she was about to teach wasn't just about math. It was about persistence. Second chances. The quiet dignity of starting over. Outside, the sky had started to thaw, light creeping across the quad. It was still winter, but it didn't feel cold. Not anymore. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way.